My name is Kero Korodudu. This is our special weekly bulletin where we talk about the stories shaping our world and give you insights to make sense of the global political landscape and help you to understand what is happening in Pakistan and around the world. These are our top stories for this week. Pakistan sets election for January, likely minus Imran Khan. Sikh separatist killing US says it expects India to work with Canada on case. Exclusive Biden aides in talks with Vietnam for arms deal that could irk China. No sea of death, Pope calls for pan-European action on migration. President Exile calls for promoting peace, solidarity, inclusiveness through sports. And now, stories. Pakistan sets election for January, likely minus Imran Khan. Islamabad. The Election Commission of Pakistan on Thursday announced a general election for January, almost 3 months later than scheduled, removing political uncertainty over the timing to help salvage a falling economy. Elections in the politically and economically troubled South Asian nation were due to be held in November, but were delayed due to fresh demarcation of constituencies under a new census. An ECP statement said the vote will take place late in January after the conclusion of a process that includes filing nomination papers, appeals, and campaigning. Pakistan is currently being run by a caretaker government under interim Prime Minister Anwar al-Haq Kakar that is meant to oversee a general election originally. Elections were to be held within 90 days of the dissolution of the lower house of parliament in August. The Election Commission has already questioned the impartiality of the caretaker government, led by Kakar, who comes from a pro-military party, saying it appears to be aligned with the opponents of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. As it stands, former Premier Khan, the most famous Pakistan leader, cannot fight this election after he was barred from public office for 5 years. The powerful armed forces have ruled the country for over 3 decades of its 76-year history and wield enormous influence in politics, including making and breaking civilian governments. Election results are rarely accepted across the board in Pakistan, and perceptions of bias could cast a further shadow over the credibility of the process. Despite the delay, the announcement eases political uncertainty about when the polls would be held, as the country struggles to stay on a narrow stabilization path under a $3 billion bailout plan by International Monetary Fund (IMF). Analysts and political parties have been demanding that the elections be held as soon as possible to boost confidence in the ailing $350 billion economy, which is currently suffering from high inflation, low growth, and a weak currency. The Asian Development Bank also endorsed this view in a report this week, saying a smooth election process would help bring the economy back on track. Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf will hope to repeat its 2018 victory, but amidst a continuing standoff with the military, the PTI's prospects hinge on a defense with the generals, which looks unlikely. There are 2 other main contenders to lead the next government: the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz PMLN of the last Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and the Pakistan People's Party PPP. 3-time Premier Nawaz Sharif, the brother of Shehbaz, and whose PMLN was the senior party in the last coalition government, is seeking a return from exile, but with a corruption conviction against him still in force, Shehbaz remains a front-runner to return to power. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, 34, the co-chairman of the PPP and son of Asif Ali Zardari, is another key candidate. He made waves locally and in foreign capitals, his first government job as foreign minister in the outgoing government, and is widely seen as a future premier. Sikh separatist killing, US says it expects India to work with Canada on case. The United States made clear on Friday that it expected the Indian government to work with Canada on efforts to investigate the possible involvement of New Delhi agents in the murder of a Canadian citizen in June. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on Monday that Ottawa had credible intelligence linking Indian agents to the murder of Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar, prompting an angry reaction from New Delhi, which denies the allegation. We are deeply concerned about the allegations that Prime Minister Trudeau has raised, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken told reporters in a press briefing. It would be important that India work with the Canadians on this investigation. We want to see accountability. The White House has spoken of its concerns over the allegations, but Blinken is the most senior US official to have commented thus far. Traditional Canadian allies, including the United States, appeared to take a cautious approach to the matter earlier this week. Political analysts said this was partly because the United States and other major players see India as a counterweight to the growing influence of China. We have been consulting very closely with our Canadian colleagues, not just consulting, but coordinating with them on this issue, Blinken said. During a press conference, Trudeau was asked about the allegations, and he repeated his call for the Indian government to cooperate. We are there to work constructively with India. We hope that they engage with us so that we can get to the bottom of this very serious matter, Trudeau said. On Friday, Trudeau also said Canada shared its concerns with New Delhi some time ago. Canada has shared the credible allegations that I talked about on Monday with India. We did that many weeks ago, Trudeau told reporters. The Canadian government has amassed both human and signals intelligence in a months-long investigation into the Sikh separatist leader's murder. CBC News reported separately on Thursday, citing sources. The report said the intelligence included communications of Indian officials present in Canada, adding some of the information was provided by an unidentified ally in the Five Eyes Alliance. Five Eyes is an intelligence sharing network that includes the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. However, Trudeau has not provided any details about what Canada's spy agencies have collected, and his office has not confirmed or denied the CBC report. Senior Canadian government sources have said that Trudeau would not have spoken publicly without having a high level of confidence in the intelligence. Exclusive Biden aides in talks with Vietnam for arms deal that could irk China. The Biden administration is in talks with Vietnam over an agreement for the largest arms transfer in history between the ex-Cold War adversaries, according to two people familiar with a deal that could irk China and sideline Russia. A package which could come together within the next year could consummate the newly upgraded partnership between Washington and Hanoi with the sale of a fleet of American F-16 fighter jets as the South Asian nation faces tensions with Beijing in the disputed South China Sea, one of the people said. The deal is still in the early stages with exact terms yet to be worked out and may not come together, but it was a key topic of Vietnamese-US official talks in Hanoi, New York, and Washington over the past month. Washington is considering structuring special financing terms for the pricey equipment that could help cash-strapped Hanoi steer away from its traditional reliance on lower-cost Russian-made arms, according to the other source who declined to be named. Spokespersons for the White House and Vietnamese Foreign Ministry did not respond to requests for comment. We have a very productive and promising security relationship with the Vietnamese, and we do see interested movement from them in some US systems, and particularly anything that can help them better monitor their maritime domain, perhaps transport, aircraft, and some other platforms, said a US official. Part of what we are working on internally as the US government is being creative about how we could try to provide better financing options to Vietnam to get them things that might be really useful to them. A major US-Vietnam arms deal could aggravate China, Vietnam's larger neighbor, which is wary of Western efforts to box in Beijing. A long-simmering territorial dispute between Vietnam and China is heating up in the South China Sea and explains why Vietnam is looking to build up maritime defenses. They are developing asymmetric defensive capabilities but want to do so without triggering a response from China, said Jeffrey O'Donnell, Associate Professor of International Security Studies at Tokyo International University and Director for Maritime Security at Pacific Forum. International, a think tank, it is a delicate balancing act, O'Donnell said. Washington should shift funds set aside for financing militaries in the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific region so partners like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Taiwan can afford the weapons they need to resist Beijing. The Biden administration has said it is trying to balance geopolitical competition with China, including in the Pacific, and responsibly managing the two superpowers relationship. Earlier this month, Vietnam upgraded Washington to Hanoi's highest diplomatic status alongside China and Russia when US President Joe Biden visited the country. The diplomatic turnaround marks a sharp pivotal nearly a half-century after the end of the Vietnam War. No sea of death. Pope calls for pan-European action on migration. Pope Francis on Saturday condemned belligerent nationalisms and called for a pan-European response to migration to stop the Mediterranean, where thousands have drowned, from becoming the graveyard of dignity. Francis spoke out in favour of welcoming migrants in a long speech that concluded a church conference on Mediterranean issues in Marseille, a French port that for centuries has been a crossroads of cultures and religions. There is a cry of pain that resonates most of all and is turning the Mediterranean, the mare nostrum, from the cradle of civilization into the mare mortem, the graveyard of dignity. It is the stifled cry of migrant brothers and sisters, he said, using Latin terms meaning our sea and sea of death. Francis was welcomed at the windy portside where the conference centre is located by President Emmanuel Macron, with whom he was due to have a private meeting later on Saturday before returning to Rome. The Pope began the day by visiting a centre for the needy in Marseille's Saint-Maron district, one of France's poorest, run by the order of nuns found by Saint Mother Teresa. Later at the conference, he called for an ample number of legal and popular entrances of migrants, with emphasis on accepting those fleeing war, hunger and poverty, rather than on preservation of one's own well-being. According to UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, about 178,500 migrants have come to Europe via the Mediterranean this year, while about 2,500 died or went missing. Governments in several European countries, including Italy, Hungary and Poland, are led by outspoken opponents of immigration. Francis called on people to hear the cries of pain rising from North Africa and the Middle East. How greatly we need this at the present juncture, when antiquated and belligerent nationalisms want to make the dream of the community of nations fade, he said. He did not name any countries. While Francis has said often that migrants should be shared among the 27 EU countries, his overall openness towards migrants included once calling their exclusion scandalous, disgusting and sinful, has riled conservative politicians. His 27-hour trip has been dominated by migration issues. On Friday, he said migrants who risk drowning at sea must be rescued because doing so was a duty of humanity, and that those who impede rescues commit a gesture of hate. President Xi calls for promoting peace, solidarity, inclusiveness through sports. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for promoting peace, solidarity and inclusiveness through sports at a welcoming banquet ahead of the opening ceremony of the 19th Asian Games on Saturday. As members of a community with a shared future, Asian countries should adhere to good neighborliness and mutual benefit, reject the Cold War mentality and camp-based confrontation, and make Asia an anchor for world peace, Xi said when addressing the banquet in the eastern Chinese city of Hangzhou. On solidarity, Xi said, as humanity is faced with unprecedented global challenges, Asian people must seize historic opportunities and work together to tackle these challenges so that Asia can embark on a broader path of common development, openness and integration. On inclusiveness, Xi said the Asian Games, with many unique sporting events of Asia, offers a stage where sports and cultures enrich each other and vividly shows how Asian countries learn from one another and beam with vitality. He stressed the efforts to promote inclusiveness through sports, enhance confidence in Asian civilizations, uphold communication and mutual learning, and add new glory to Asian civilizations.